So this will not come as much of a surprise to any of you who have watched any of my videos before. My favorite game to play as a kid was dress up. Big shocker. I had so many dresses and pieces of fun clothing, but this one right here was by far my favorite. This was a Tinkerbell costume, but I felt like an absolute fairy princess wearing it. I wore this, I feel like, almost every day until I couldn't fit into it anymore, and it was basically disintegrating before my eyes. Any day after school at this point, which probably would have been around kindergarten, you could find me in the backyard wearing this dress, driving around in my pink Barbie Jeep. Yes, iconic, I know. This dress holds so much nostalgia for me that this year I'm gonna make a costume specifically inspired by this dress. I have some leftover thrifted curtains that I think are a pretty good color match to the original Tinkerbell dress, as well as some sheer fabrics that would be definitely inspired by my dress that I wore as a kid. Also, the timing is just perfect because I change my hair all the time, but right now my hair is pretty close to what it looked like when I was like 5 or 6 years old. So it's meant to be. And with that, let's get started on the design. Now, because it's been over a couple of decades, we are going to grow up this design, essentially. And that starts with one of my favorite pieces of clothing, corsets. I am also going to add these leaf-like bust cups on top of the corset. I really like the torn edges from my original dress, so I am going to emulate that with several layers of handkerchief hems, which will also create a really interesting silhouette. Lastly, I wanted a sleeve, but I wanted it to be different from my original dress, so instead I'm going to have them be longer, detached, and very flouncy. Also, instead of the green and white, I'm going to diversify the color palette a bit because I love color. So instead I'll be doing green, teal, and a two-tone pink and green fabric. Okay, here's the final design. Now let's get to cutting. For the corset, I've had this green polyester shower curtain hanging around for a while. I used a little bit of it for a Halloween project last year, but I knew this color would be perfect for Tinkerbell. I used this corset pattern, which is a size smaller than me, so I have to add a bit of extra ease to every piece, and I wanted it to come down longer over my hips, so I estimated the general shape at the bottom. This bottom part ended up being too big, but I'd rather it be too big than too small, because it's easy enough to just create new seams. After cutting an outer shell and inner lining layer for each piece, it was time to move on to the skirt pieces. So for the two different types of skirt layers, one is this iridescent two-tone organza, which I think is just gorgeous and really gives off some similar vibes to my childhood dress. One of my favorite easy ways to make a skirt is this handkerchief hem. I've done this several times, and I explain more of my math in my romper video, which I'll link above. But basically, I fold the skirt as if I'm going to make a circle skirt, but only cut out my waist measurement plus a few inches, so it will fit over my shoulders. I'll use elastic to get this to fit later. Handkerchief hems are so easy, and I'm kind of obsessed with them, and I made each of these layers in a slightly different length so they would show up underneath each other, and I ended up being able to cut out 4 total, 2 in each fabric. Because corsets need a lot of stability, I always add at least one layer of fusible interfacing to my lining layer. A lot of people have been asking me where my roll of interfacing comes from, so the link will be in the description. It is unfortunately from Amazon, but I am so tired of constantly going to Joann's for every project to just get a small amount of interfacing, so if I ever find this anywhere else, I will definitely let you know. First off, can we talk about how like perfect this curtain was for Tinkerbell? It's like, I feel like if you popped up a picture, it's pretty much an exact match. Like I've had this just sitting around for, I would say, if not a year, then 2 years. I bought it at the thrift store and then I brought it home and I was like, ooh, this isn't like the best fabric for clothing. But you know what it's good for? Corsets. Do you ever have a fabric that just doesn't feel quite right for general clothing? Like if it's stiffer or doesn't quite lay the way you want it to lay, I tend to just make them into corsets and it saves it. It's worth the $7 at that point that I spent on the thrifted curtain. That's my little tip of the day. So a couple of things. I ran out of that beautiful two-toned pink green fabric much quicker than I thought I would. I wanted to do one more skirt layer and possibly make the sleeves out of them and possibly make the wings out of them. I was deciding between the lighter like teal fabric. I think I'll just make the sleeves out of that. That way I don't have to worry about it. I have ordered the pink green fabric, not the exact same one because the other one was sold out now. I'm hoping that this is similar enough. If it's not perfect, it's not the end of the world, but I'm hoping it's similar. That should arrive the end of tomorrow, so we'll work on that when we get that in. So today we're gonna kind of move around my plan of what I was going to do in what order. Not that I told you, it was all in my brain, so I could have not said anything. We're going to start on the corset today, hopefully get to a place where it's almost finished, and then we can work on all the accoutrements. Let's get started. Okay, so first up, I'm gonna flatline these because I don't do a lining layer and an outer shell layer usually when it comes to my corsets because I don't care if the insides of my corsets, that's usually me, like as long as the inside of my corset is functional, I don't care if it looks amazing. Same with clothing. I'll do this one. This one was cheaper for the flatlining and it's not as good. It's a little bit of a weak thread, not gonna lie. It's really interesting about this dress specifically being my favorite dress growing up as a kid because I was a Disney kid, like through and through. My favorite movie growing up as a kid was Cinderella. I watched that 5 million times from probably the age of like 2 to 6. So that's not weird that I would like a Disney costume. The thing is that Tinkerbell definitely was not my favorite like Disney character. Peter Pan was never my favorite Disney movie, like ever. And you know, now as an adult realizing that there was that very racist scene towards indigenous people, you know, all in all, just like not my favorite movie. Not that, you know, Disney has a history with racism or anything. No, why would you say that? I think it was just because it was my only, first of all, it was gifted to me. And I always loved gifts as a kid. Like if you gave it to me as a gift, I treated it as if it was so much more special than just the average thing. Second of all, I think it was the most princessy dress that I had. Like my parents bought me a lot of costumes. If you can't tell, I loved costumes from like such a young age. So I had a ton, but that one was by far the most princessy and it had the most detail. So I think I just latched onto it for that reason. I think that's it. It's funny how there's like no there's nostalgia towards the movie just like there is. I was a Disney kid. Like I said, like I have nostalgia towards every Disney movie that came out before the age of like 13. But it's just funny that me as a little kid like latched on to that dress specifically. I don't even really know why. And I just had to talk about it. So now we're actually gonna get to sewing now that I've taken 3 times longer to set up my machine. Let's go. By the way, I am watching The Muppets Haunted Mansion, which is so fun. I'm a big Muppets fan, specifically the Muppets Christmas Carol movie. That is probably one of my favorite movies of all time, but this one is really fun, and if you like the Muppets and the ride, I highly recommend it. So after edge finishing all the pieces, leaving the bottom edges open for the boning later, I started putting the corset together. Once I knew it would fit relatively well, I shaped the bottom edge with it being slightly higher at the hips and lower at center front and back. I then made all the boning channels, one on each side of every seam, and since I'll be doing my first back closing corset, one at each end of the center back for stability at the eyelets. Then it was time to cut and file down the boning so it won't poke through the fabric. I made each length of boning about an inch shorter than the length of the boning channel so I can turn the ends of the corset under without hitting the boning. Then I slipped the boning between the lining and outer layer at the bottom where I didn't do any edge finishing. So in my fall wardrobe video, a few people seemed to be a bit confused and thought when I was complaining about the small bias tape I was working with, I didn't know how to properly sew on bias tape. Don't worry, I do know how to properly put it on. None of you are being patronizing or anything, but I just wanted everyone to know. But also, some people left some helpful advice I'd never heard of, so I wanted to thank you guys, and we'll definitely try them out in the future. This is single fold bias tape, which I really love. It's perfect for the edges of clothing or hems, and since I don't do lining layers all that often, bias tape is such a great alternative to make edges look nice and finished. After opening up the tape, I sew my edge to one edge of the tape, then fold it over to where it is hidden on the inside. You can definitely hand stitch it at this point if you want it to look extra nice, but I just tend to machine sew. Okay, the corset is done. Because I did a back closure, I ended up having to do like double the amount of eyelets, and that was not fun, and that took me all night, and I was very frustrated, so I didn't film it. I'll do everything but the fairy wings today, so that means the sleeves, the skirt. I also want to make like an extra bust because I wanted this to be usable outside of this project because I don't have very many like everyday corsets like that you can wear under clothing. So instead, I've seen people who have done just corsets in general, but also Tinkerbell corsets. They have these like pointy little things, and I really like them. It kind of gives off a leaf vibe. Anything else? Sleeves, skirt, and the bust. I think I can get that done today. We'll see. Let's go. Since I didn't have a ton of my green fabric left, I actually did a mock-up. I know, that's shocking for me, with this fabric that I have a ton of. I wanted it to have a slight bulbous shape, so I definitely had to play around with the curves, but eventually I got it to the right shape, cut it out in the green fabric, and added interfacing so it wouldn't flop or lose its shape. Since I have 2 layers for the leaf, I stitched them together first right side to right side, leaving enough open space to turn it right side out. Or I guess leafing enough open space to turn it right side out. I'm sorry. Then to get it to lay right, I top stitched over those edges. And this is when I realized my overalls had a ton of stains on them and I had to go change. I needed some way to put these little cups over the corset, so I attached them to a ribbon that would be tied at the back. Then it was time to work on the skirts. I first hemmed all the straight edges by turning over the raw edges twice. Then, since none of these skirts are fitted to my waist, that way they can be slipped over my shoulders, I bought some green elastic so it wouldn't be so visible and measured them to my waist. Then I did a zigzag stitch while pulling tight on the elastic to make the top of the skirt slightly gathered. This is actually how I sew gathering for all my skirts if you haven't watched my videos before, but these I just left at this step. I didn't attach them to a waistband or to a top because honestly I think these might be useful as individual layers in the future. For the sleeves, I had just enough leftover fabric to make 2 long rectangles about a foot or 2 longer than the length of my arm. I then hemmed the top and bottom edges. After that, I cut out 4 pieces of elastic, each measuring the width of my arm, marked 4 segments for the elastic, and stitched those on similarly to the skirt elastic. Sometimes I had to tuck the fabric under to get it to be the right width. Then I did a zigzag stitch to connect the sleeves together. Okay, ignore my outfit for this last segment. I had just come in from walking my dog and I had a burst of energy to finish this project all of a sudden, so we're all gonna have to deal with my workout clothes. So I am totally inspired by this photo I saw on Pinterest for the wings. So after drawing up a similar shape, I cut it out with a 1/2 inch seam allowance for the fabric and I started forming the wire in the general shape. So last year when I'd made these kind of ugly fairy wings that broke almost immediately, someone gave me some great advice that twisting the wire together makes it stronger. So in the U shape that's going to tuck into my corset, I twisted some wire around it to strengthen this area. It ended up working well, a lot better than last time. So thank you, commenter. To protect myself from the sharp ends and keep the wings together better, I wrapped electrical wire around this bottom area as well. So you might have noticed that this new organza fabric isn't quite a match to the first one, which I was afraid of, but you know, it's not the end of the world. I was originally planning on hand stitching the fabric to the wings, but honestly, machine stitching 2 layers together was so much easier and actually ended up working really well. I left the bottom open and slipped it over the wire like a sleeve, and later I hand stitched the bottom closed. At this point, I tried the corset and the bust pieces on and realized it was a bit too boobalicious for my personal taste. So with the leftover fabric from the wings, I made a makeshift undergarment by attaching 2 lengths to a ribbon that would cover my chest. Then twisted them to make straps. I was hoping underneath the bust cups these would kind of look like closed flowers and would make this cool effect. And with that, it is time to show you the final result. Okay, well that's just all stuck again. That's fine, I'll fix that later. Ta-da! That is all of it. There are 5 million pieces to this costume, which took forever to put on. And it's been slowly, basically decomposing before my very eyes. The wings constantly need readjustment. I think I needed to take another wire and kind of connect them together at a different point. So I can wear these again. I just have to work on them a little bit. The U shape at the bottom though is good. These needed wire to stay because oh my gosh, these come down every 5 seconds. Also, I like this better without the sleeves. The sleeves look cool. I would love to wear these sleeves with a different outfit, but it's just a lot. I have a lot going on. So I think I like it just like this. I also look like the fairy godmother from Ella Enchanted. That's just me pulling it from my memory. Editing me will have to show you a picture. I think it's close. That's also very fun. One of my favorite movies of all time. So very rarely does something that I come up with in my brain translate so perfectly into the real world. There's always something that goes wrong or doesn't look quite right. Like, this is how my brain imagined this outfit looking. I mean, I would love for these to be like a little flatter, 90% there, like pretty perfect with how I envisioned it in my brain. So that is my Halloween costume. Not that I'm going anywhere. It's just a costume basically for the internet. Usually I do like a little cooking segment. I kind of ran out of time this week, so no cooking break, which a few of you will probably love because some of you make it very clear to me that you don't like the cooking segments, but most of you seem to like them. So sorry, this is a one-time thing. I just kind of ran out of time. Sorry about that. Next week will be a Halloween styling video, just kind of a little bit more chill because this project took it out of me a little bit. If you like this video and want to see more from me, be sure to subscribe. Liking and commenting also really help me out. I hope you had a good time and hope to see you back here next time. Bye. It ain't nothing but a mistake. That feels too close to me. That's not straight across. What is up with me and never being able to make a 90-degree angle with my camera? Wait, hold on. I can get it.
Fix it. I guess another wire to keep the